Live Fit Podcast, episode 48, with Bob Maves, who explains that women are people too. Plus, my daughter's going to come on and give us an update on her New Year's resolution.
Sit-ups, I did 86.
Holy cow.
And push-ups, I did I think 55.
What?
Women really don't get the time that we need for them. They end up with programs that are watered down by a trainer and maybe a men's program, and then they kind of lighten it up a little bit and they call it a women's program. And same with the older people. We treat them like hothouse flowers. We set them in corners and make them do curls and tricep extensions and then hope that they don't fall down. And so I looked at this and said, there's too many parallels between an elite athlete and a 75-year-old trying to stabilize. The similarities are amazing, and you just have to tailor it to that 75-year-old's requirement.
You're listening to the Live Fit Podcast with Glenn Johnson. Here, we'll talk about all things related to good health, fitness, food, fat loss, and the mind-body connection.
Ah, yes. It is time once again for the Live Fit Podcast. I'm your host, Glenn Johnson. Thank you all very much for listening. It means a lot to me. This is episode 48. Today I will be speaking with Bob Maves, who believes women should be trained differently than men, the elderly should not, and everybody should be trained like an athlete. You may remember Bob from episode 47. He is one of the partners at Horizon Sports. I wanted to have him back on the show to give us more detail about how he trains women and the elderly. I'll also have Naeem and Steve, his other two partners, on subsequent episodes. Instead of giving you my healthy tidbits today, I'm going to play a couple of interviews from my kids. First off is my daughter. She was on episode 41. You may remember that she gave her New Year's resolutions. At that time, I suggested she come back on the show around her birthday, which is 4 months later, and give us her progress. After all, what good is a goal if you do not follow through? So to help her keep her mind on task and reduce the pull of forgetfulness and time, I asked if she would come back on the show. My son, seeing this, also wanted to get on and say a few words about health and fitness. Let me preface these two interviews by saying I did not script or prompt or coerce or even discuss what they were going to say beforehand. I did edit out some ums and some long pauses, but that was for listenability. I'm here with my amazing daughter, awesome Astrid. And if you remember from episode 41, I had her on to tell us what her New Year's resolutions were going to be for this year, 2015. And at the end of that interview, she said that she would come back around the time of her birthday to give us an update on how she's been doing. And she had a birthday a few days ago on Astrid Fool's Day, and she's how old?
10.
She's 10 years old, and she now has earrings, so she's turning into a lady. Say hi, everybody, Astrid.
Hi, everybody.
So let's get right into this. How are you doing on your resolution?
I think I'm doing really good.
How about if you refresh our memories for anybody who doesn't remember or who maybe didn't listen to episode 41? What were your New Year's resolutions?
My New Year's resolutions were to be less shy, to be more responsible, and to be more healthy.
Those are awesome. I love them. And by the way, I didn't tell her what goals to have. She came up with those all by herself. And if I remember right, it was her idea to come on the show and have a resolution and tell you guys that. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so your first goal, to be more responsible. What do you think?
I think I'm doing good. I am doing more chores. I'm doing more around the house. And I'm taking more care of my teeth.
Oh, very good. Very good. And I thought I was going to have to kind of prompt you with some details on being more responsible. I was anticipating you to nod your head and say, yep, or something like that. And then I was going to ask you for some details on what you're being more responsible with. But to prove that you are really succeeding at your second goal, you were not shy and you shared with us exactly what was on your mind and told us how you're being more responsible. And as your father, I will attest that, yeah, you absolutely have been more responsible, more mature. I can really count on you. If you say you're going to do something, you're probably going to do it.
Yes.
And have you noticed you're less shy in other situations aside from just standing here talking to me with a microphone in your face?
Well, whenever someone says hi to me, I say hi back and I say, how are you doing? And I speak up.
Very good. Now, I remember one time we were at a coffee shop or something, and your teacher from the previous year or the year before came in, and she said, hi, Astrid, how are you? And you immediately looked at your feet. So have you had another opportunity like that to look the adult in the eye and say, hi, how are you?
Yes.
When was this? Recently?
Yes, it's been happening.
Good, good. And you're making eye contact and not being shy around adults.
Right.
Good, good. I love it. Now, the last one, to be more healthy. Now, that's kind of vague because it depends on how unhealthy you are to start off with. But what are you doing to be more healthy?
In the morning, sometimes I do sit-ups and push-ups, and
Really? I didn't know that.
And I run.
Yes, we just went for a run about an hour ago.
Yes.
That was fun.
It was hard.
Yeah, but fun, right?
Yes. Kind of.
Yeah, once you get to the point where it's not super hard, then it becomes more fun.
Right. Yeah.
So what else are you doing to be more healthy?
I am not eating as much junk food. I'm eating more salad and more healthy foods.
And today's Easter, so saying you're not eating much junk food is saying a lot because you had a lot of candy, maybe not a lot, but you had candy available today too, didn't you?
Yes.
How much did you eat today?
I don't know.
A handful of jelly beans?
No, I don't like jelly beans. Like 5 pieces of chocolate maybe.
Okay, good. Excellent, excellent. And when you say you're eating less junk food, what types of junk foods were you eating before and not so much anymore?
Like cake and cookies and candy and unhealthy chips.
I know you're getting less fried foods, those darn kids' foods on the kid menus at restaurants. Yeah, the chicken strips and the greasy pizza and the corn dogs. Blah. One reason for that is because well, I guess officially you're no longer a kid, right?
Right.
So we don't eat off the kids' menu anymore unless you really want to. But also you're big enough that you can eat adult-sized portions. So that helps. And I noticed when you're eating from the adult menu, you're not getting the same crap that you would have on the kids' menu. You're not getting the larger-sized corn dog.
Right, but sometimes instead of fries, I get fruit or a small salad.
Yeah, you sure do. Yeah, I've been really impressed with you on that. And aside from our run that we do every other day or so, what else are you doing for exercise?
I do dance, and yeah.
Well, there's PE in school, right?
Well, yeah.
What do you do there?
One time we ran around our track, ran around and walked.
Good. Anything else?
We did a sit-up test and a push-up test.
That's right. How many did you do of those?
Sit-ups I did 86.
Holy cow.
And push-ups I did I think 55.
What?
Yeah.
On your toes or your knees?
Toes.
What?
Yeah, I could do more.
Wow. I don't know what to say. I don't think I knew how many you did. Well, Astrid, I am really impressed. I was impressed watching you all along, and I thought, oh, this isn't going to last. She's going to cave into childhood whim and start eating cake for breakfast and cotton candy for dinner and all that. But yeah, you weren't perfect or ideal, but you were certainly a lot better with your eating, and I've noticed you've been more active, and certainly your responsibility level has gone up quite a bit, and I've really noticed it. So awesome. You're doing great.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for sharing this with us. I'm sure a lot of people will find inspiration in this.
Okay, bye.
Bye. And not to be outdone, my 7-year-old son, Anders, wanted to put his 2 cents in. Hi, Anders.
Hi.
So I understand you like to exercise. Is that true?
Yes.
How many push-ups can you do?
About 100.
Really? 100 push-ups? That's a lot.
Yep.
When do you do 100 push-ups?
At karate.
You pretty good at karate?
Yep.
Are you awesome?
About.
What about any other sports? Do you play any other sports?
Yep. Well, I used to play football, soccer, basketball, and baseball.
And you like karate the best, though, right?
Yep.
Do you do anything else do you ever exercise in any other way?
Yep. You could do sit-ups and crunches and push-ups.
Cool. Those are very good exercises to do. Do you do them all the time, every day?
No, but lots of times. Most of the times.
Are you going to grow up to be healthy and strong?
Yes.
Well, no time like starting right now. It's never too young to start, right?
Yeah.
7 years old is definitely a good time to start thinking about your health and developing good eating habits, right?
Yes.
What kind of healthy foods do you like to eat?
Spinach, cabbage, broccoli, eggs, and more, and lots and lots and lots of protein.
What kind of protein do you like? Do you like fish?
Yeah.
Hamburger?
Yep.
Steak?
Yep.
Sushi?
Yep.
You're lying.
Nope.
You don't like sushi.
I kind of like sushi.
Since when? But all right. I'll remind you of this next time we go out for sushi. I didn't prompt him to say these things, by the way. He truly does like these foods. What is your favorite junk food?
Donuts, ice cream, and cotton candy. And candy.
And candy.
And candy.
And candy.
And candy.
What's your favorite kind of candy?
Cotton candy.
How many times have you had cotton candy in your life?
3.
Well, that's 2 more than I know about. Do you have anything else you'd like to say, Anders?
No.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us and for inspiring all those kids out there to eat healthy and exercise now before they develop those bad habits.
Yep. And bye-bye.
All right. Let's hear from Bob Maves and see what he has to say about keeping women strong yet feminine. I have Bob Maves on the line. You heard him in episode 47 with Horizon Sports, and he's one of the partners in this team of this trio. And I wanted to talk to him today because he is a real brilliant guy when it comes to the physicality and doing some things that you may not have really heard of, but are very important to a person's overall fitness and mobility, wellness, happiness, and ease of discomfort. Hi, Bob. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you.
So just real briefly, for those that either didn't hear episode 47 or they don't remember, just give us a brief bio of who you are and what makes you an expert in this field.
Well, okay. I'm 70 years old, so I generally tend to gravitate towards some of the older clients, but that's not where I end up completely. I started out years ago as an athlete, and then ended up doing a lot of coaching. I teach martial arts and have for 45 years, So a lot of the systems that we develop have been developed toward the martial artist. And I really realized very early on quickly that it was the same systems that needed to be used for the everyday person because they had the same problems. When we correct something on an athlete, we're actually correcting somebody in an everyday life. So we as a group, we label all of our clients as athletes. Whether they're secretaries or firemen, they're still athletes. And the game they play is the job they're in, just like the job of a professional athlete or an elite athlete is to play their sport. And so their training takes them to that sport in a more equipped way. Well, it's the same thing we do with the game of life. We actually adapt those things for them. And where I saw a big hole in the market was women really don't get the time that we need for them. They end up with programs that are watered down by a trainer and maybe a men's program, and then they kind of lighten it up a little bit and they call it a women's program. And same with the older people. We treat them like hothouse flowers. We set them in corners and make them do curls and tricep extensions and then hope that they don't fall down. And so I looked at this and said, there's too many parallels between an elite athlete and a 75-year-old trying to stabilize. The similarities are amazing, and you just have to tailor it to that 75-year-old's requirement, and then you get the results that you're really looking for. So anyway, that's briefly what I do.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Bob. And I want to go back to something you said about how most women's programs are just kind of watered down men's programs. So what should be a ideal program for a woman, and how does it differ than one for a man?
Well, first of all, women are not. When I look at one of our female clients, one of our female athletes, I don't look at them as less. I look at them as different. So the first thing you have to realize is that there are some absolutes. Everybody should squat. Everybody should lunge. Everybody has to bend over. It's the amount of intensity and the way it's done. Women's bodies are constructed differently. If you're an older male like I am, you've been looking at women for a long time, you kind of realize that after a while that they are different. Okay, and all those curves that make them so attractive also cause a lot of problems. They create shear force when you start loading those joints, and so the way you load them changes. You might use a lunge for a male and require them, for example, to push up more through the front part of their foot so it loads their quad, because they tend not to be as quad dominant. Females are very quad dominant, and because of that, their pelvis is tilted a lot further forward, and so when they lunge, we push them up through the heels in order to activate the posterior chain or their glutes to kind of balance out that rotation at their hip line. So it's just little things like that, and those little things matter big time when it comes to readjusting their anatomy for a posturally correct position. We start with posture. Everybody starts with posture.
Right.
The posture is where things start and end. So we posturally change them, and then we start loading them. But even then we have to be careful, because women will take intensity not as well as males. But the interesting part is they recover faster. So it's not about how much we can do this hour. It's how much can we do over the period of this week, so that we look at this and we spread some of that out and allow them to adapt and recover and then load them again. So they can get very strong, and they can get extremely strong, and they don't have to get bigger. That's the other fallacy that comes with training the women. We want them to lift weights because they don't want to be big and muscular. They want to be long and lean, and we manipulate some of the exercise variables in order to eliminate the adaptation time on their bodies, in order to keep them in more of a lean kind of figure skating look rather than the muscular bodybuilding look.
Well, what would you do differently? Because that is probably the first thing out of almost every woman's mouth that I speak to about weight training, and because most of the time these women are just doing the cardio, and they'll spend an hour on the cardio every day, and then of course they wonder why they're not losing fat. And so I work on talking them into doing weight training, and that's what they always say. They don't want to look like a man. They don't want to be big, burly muscles. And so what would you do to assure the woman, and what types of exercises would you give her to?
Well, that's a good question. The first thing we do is reassure them the fact that they're probably not capable of building the same kind of muscle density and size that a male is, because women have only about 10% of the testosterone levels in their body that men do. So consequently, their muscle building capacity is less to begin with. So the chances of them getting really bigger are far less. The biggest thing is that when we start putting a woman on a weightlifting program, and she has said that made this statement that, I don't want to get bigger, I just want to get leaner, I want to get this. We take some circumferential measurements to make sure that we know where we're going or where we've been. So about the time that you get the comment that, I feel really good, but, I don't want to get big and muscular. And when you generally measure again, whether it's calf, waistline, around the chest, around the arms, it's generally smaller. What we have is a little bit, maybe there isn't quite as much weight loss, but there is more toning. And muscle density, muscles weigh more than fat. And so consequently, there is a little bit of a trade-off there. And we try to encourage them to not look at the scale, but look at the mirror.
Right.
And because basically how they look and how they feel is really what we're after. They may weigh a couple of pounds more this way or a couple of pounds more that way. People get fixated on that, and it's not about the weight. It's about your fitness level and how you look, how your clothes fit. Can you go for a walk with your grandson? How do you feel about climbing those hills with your husband? Those things are really those are the foundation of the quality of our life, and that's how we try to get them to look at what they're doing. And then pretty soon they realize that looking trim, looking fit, looking not necessarily muscular, but looking toned is a very good look.
What you say, Bob, makes perfect sense. I know a lot of people listening are nodding their heads saying, yeah, that's right. And I've had this exact conversation with women before, and some of them still, after I say something very similar to what you just said, they come in with the big but. Yeah, but I weigh this much. I don't want to weigh this much. And I'll kind of rephrase what I just said about you're stronger, you're leaner, you have less body fat, you're more capable, you're more fit, your body circumference has changed, you're close, you're 2, 3 dress sizes, 4 dress sizes lower, all that stuff, and then they still come up. But I weigh 150 pounds or 60 pounds or whatever it might be, and for some reason that number is a stigma, and it's verboten for them to weigh that much because in high school they were 125 or whatever it may be. Right.
Well, I'll give you an example. Steve and I actually did an assessment on a woman in her early 40s yesterday. She is an equestrian, and she's reasonably tall for a female, maybe in the 5'8" category, going at 147 pounds. One of the first things that came out of the conversation initially was, I'd like to weigh a little less. She looked fine, right? She looked fine. I said, then you want to weigh a little less. Why? Because the scale said you were 147 pounds, and that 147-pound number scares you. Is it the number, or is it how you look? And you just have to have just more conversation. And sometimes those clients require us to have a little more care in terms of how we continue to speak to the issue of what they look like rather than what that number on the scale is. I mean, the thing is that they want to lose a little weight. We can help them lose a little weight, but unless they feel stronger, unless you're able to do more, and we try to tie in what it is that you want to do. You want to weigh 5 pounds less. Will that change the way you look or the way you look at the scale? Is it going to help you climb that, go hiking in the park with your husband better, or what? What is that? What do you perceive that to be able to help you to do? And most of the time they can't answer that. And so we try to provide an answer for them that is commensurate to their goal. And over time, it will tend to sink in. It's very difficult because we are inundated every day with the 6-minute buns and the 5-minute abs and the 7-second arm reduction program. And it's all over the television. It's everywhere. So we are fighting against the tide. It's very difficult. But those people who are serious and who you take the time with will tend to come around. And when they start to feel stronger, when they feel results, when they can do things they couldn't do before, it tends to solidify your argument.
Yeah, that's true. It certainly does. And we're always going to have the media working against us. I feel like as long as I've been in this industry that we've been making some headway. When I first started, very few women exercised. And when they did, it was really light things, Pilates and yoga, or they would stand in front of the dumbbell stand in front of the mirror doing 2-pound dumbbell curls, bicep curls.
Right. I
don't even let my students do bicep curls. I say it's the biggest waste of time in the gym. But yet but here are these women standing there for every day or every time they go to the gym for years and years and years doing the same exercise with the same weight.
Right. Well, you see the same thing. They get on a stair stepper and you walk into the gym and you see the woman on the stair stepper and you come in about the same time each time you go, and there's a woman on the stair stepper 6 months from now. She doesn't look any different than she did before, but she spends hours on the stair stepper.
And her elbows are locked. Her elbows are locked, so she's just basically hovering or moving her legs
hovering in space. That's exactly right. The problem is in the result, and you have to be able to get them to believe you long enough for them to get a result. The manipulation of the variable is really important. And one thing you did say previously, you talked about bicep curls and tricep extensions. The only time that I even give any prescription that has a bicep curl and a tricep extension attached to the prescription is when the woman is very emphatic about the fact she wants to reduce the flabby arms. If we get that comment, this is very, very common. And so we'll put a little bit into their program at the end, but I always do it as a circuit. I do it as a complete burn, and there's no time in between. It's 2 or 3 sets, and we hit them hard at the very end and make sure that we've really adjusted their nutrition properly, because that's actually what's going to make the difference. And what they're trying to do is tone up. So what they don't realize is that muscle density has to change a little. They have to get a little. What they don't want to do is get a little bit more. Use the term buff, where their arms get a little more toned, and they have to hit it with the nutrition. So it's a combination of a lot of things, but that's more of a placebo than it is of something that's really going to make huge changes. What's going to make huge changes is the amount of metabolism increase, and hold that metabolism properly, get the amount of stimulus on all the major muscle groups in the body to change their shape completely, and then all of a sudden, this is not as big a problem. The way we do it is really simple. To keep them from getting bigger, it's a manipulation of the rest period. The normal rest period, you get you look at the normal programs out there, they're really scary. It's 3 sets of 10 with a 1-minute break, and you just put the exercises in any kind of order possible. Mm-hmm. Well, the problem is that there's a difference between strength building, hypertrophy, endurance, and strength endurance, and those loading zones change, and they are different rep numbers. They're not the same, and they may be different for everybody, but there's a kind of a starting point that we use. The rest periods will also change based on the fact that if you want more muscular adaptation, you wait longer. You want less. You want just some strength and some toning, then you wait less. So consequently, we might get a female doing like a step up onto a bench with the dumbbell in her hand that might, that may resemble the exercise that the male is doing, except her waiting period may be only 30 seconds. And his may be 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes, depending on how much weight we're using, right? How much strength do we want to build? How much toning are we looking for? And so the exercise may be similar in that regard, but what's totally different is the amount of rest period. It may be a minute, it may be less. It depends on what we're looking for. And so the less amount of adaptation time, the more toning you get. For example, you might even increase the amount of reps, which will give it more of an endurance quality but less adaptation, so the muscle is actually hit and under stress a little more. Because muscles change, the body functions with the amount of time under tension. So you have to create, you have to decide, do we want to go more toward an aerobic activity, or do we want more of an anaerobic type of activity? And the way we look at that is we accumulate the amount of time under tension during each set. So if a particular rep of a movement takes 3 seconds and you do 10, that's 30 seconds. If you do 3 sets, that's 90 seconds. You're very much into the aerobic zone, and it's more of an endurance application. If the rep takes 2 seconds or a second and a half, and you're only doing 5, and you do several sets, you still may be under the 40-second category where we want to stay into, where we get some more muscle building. If you're under 20 seconds, it's more of an explosive, more power-driven stuff. So we generalize with that, and then we manipulate the variable based on the results of the client. But it does change everything based on how we look at the loading zones for their particular exercise.
So you gave the example of a woman doing weighted step-ups compared to a man, and she would have a shorter rest period than the man. What about the relative weight she's lifting? Is she holding a relatively heavy weight similar to the man, or is it much less?
That's a good question, and that is also relative to her, but it depends on the weight. What we do is we apply the loading zone in a variable. In other words, if she's looking for some hypertrophy, we want to get more tone, we want some muscle development. We'd start with a loading zone of 8 to 12 reps. Depends on the amount of sets. It might be anywhere from 2 to 4, 2 to 3, but the reps themselves would be 8 to 12. We work on what's called a -1 rep. So, for example, if the person gets to rep number 10, and it was really difficult to hold form. And form, we define form immediately in the beginning. So it was difficult to hold form at 10. Mm-hmm. The person realizes, I can get number 11, but number 12, it's not going to be the form. Then it's -1 from failure. We stop the exercise at that point, and that set's over with. So that we're able to manipulate the amount of weight. When they can hold more and they get to 12, and they've gotten to 12 several times, we may put more weight in their hand to manipulate the variable. They cannot do less than 8. They have to try to get to 12, and we use the -1 category to decide how much weight they're going to hold. Because basically, if you should be holding a 20-pound dumbbell and you're holding a 2-pound dumbbell in your hand, then it's not going to do very much. It's not going to do what we want it to do. So the weight is going to be commensurate to the exercise, to the loading zone, and to the person that we're trying to train. And we might start very light at the beginning. It may be just body weight and gravity, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe it won't. Maybe this person is a little elderly. The step up won't be 12 inches. It could be 4. It might be a Peterson step up where we're trying to kind of stabilize the strengthen around the joint. So it may only be body weight and gravity forever. That may be enough based on their stability, their inability to create force. But eventually they will get stronger. And as they do, rather than put a weight in their hand, we might just raise it another inch or another level of the aerobic step in order to create a little more intensity by just increasing the amount of range of motion rather than just the weight. So we'll manipulate that based on the individual.
Okay, that sounds good. I have a scenario. I'm wondering if you could give me a sample program for a woman who's 50 years old and she's kind of a now and then runner, but she wants to get a little bit more serious about it and maybe train towards a half marathon somewhere down the line in no less than a year. So what kind of exercises would you give a person like that?
Those are difficult questions, to be honest with you, because basically having not been able to do an assessment, because we know what her goals are, but we don't know where she's starting. So let's just take kind of Well, let's just shoot in the dark here a little bit. First of all, we'd make sure that there are no knee issues, right? That there's no knee pain,
Right.
Because basically runners are going to experience knee pain. Is she more of a high progesterone female or a low progesterone female? In other words, is she curvy or is she less curvy? Is she more straight up and down? The more curvy they are, the more high progesterone they are, the more shear force is going to be created in those joints, and we need to make sure that when she hits the ground when she's running, and every time she takes a stride under that run, she's hitting the ground at about 3.5 times her body weight per square inch. That's a huge amount of abuse.
It is. It is.
We'll walk them, and we'll make sure that they don't pronate, because even as little as 2 degrees of pronation when they in their gait cycle will cause up to 40-45% more load at the patellofemoral joint. So you make sure that her gait looks okay, that her mechanics are fine, and that she's kind of healthy at her knees. Now, the program might require a little bit of a variable, and the variable might be, where do we start? And we would start with saying, hey, look, a half marathon. So she's looking for some endurance on top of it. So most of the sets should probably be longer than 60 seconds in nature. And it should be in the beginning, which we would periodize. We would take a 6-month period and say, okay, this would be the base. And the base would start with something simple as a lunge, right? We might do a lot of lunging. We might even do a lot of lunging backwards to check and make sure that neurologically she's capable of stabilizing in her gait. Yeah. Then we would make sure that she maybe did some step-ups. We'd make her squat because basically she would get, the stronger she is, the easier it is to run. The other thing we'd add is a component of some agility. It could be really simple. It could be as simple as stepping over a cone, stepping sideways, doing some agility work, making sure that she can move, because speed ultimately is the answer if you're going to be successful in any kind of running event, especially a marathon. And speed is a byproduct of agility and coordination and those other things. So we want to make sure that we've kind of looked at that a little bit. The other thing that's really a big component, which makes people tired, and you've seen them running out there on the street, and they run and their heads are forward, their shoulders are down. Their posture is really quite aberrant. So we would probably look at this female and say she's 50, she's had children, so therefore she is almost guaranteed to have a low abdominal weakness. So her anterior core needs lots of strength in order to kind of stabilize her posture, because if in fact she has a low abdominal wall in that running cycle, as she goes through the drive phase of the running cycle, her pelvis will rotate quite radically. And to stabilize that, we need to make sure that her lower abdominal wall is really strong enough to stabilize her posture, right?
True.
Making sure that her head forward posture is as correct as possible. And then we would do some things like work on her twist pattern. She would do a lot of twisting. We'd use a med ball, cables. We do a lot of rotational work, because twist is really important to gait, and to make sure that she has a good endurance. She has good endurance qualities on her twist pattern. I think it was Ida Rolf wrote a book called Rolfing, and I'm trying to quote her here, but best I can. But man can walk without legs, but you can't walk without twist. And so basically the most important thing is to establish a good, smooth, strong rotational or transverse pattern so that she's able to withstand, 12, 13, 14 miles under load. And that's going to take some endurance, but it means that she has to have endurance in the pattern that she's going to use. And then you can use her upper body. You can do a lot of things. Mostly it would be a pushing pattern, so that she can push and establish a good posture while she does, so she doesn't protract her shoulders or drop her head forward. And you could just give her an upper body conditioning program that would probably suffice. Almost anything you would give her would be fine. And mostly it would be pulling, because she doesn't have very much time to prepare. She only got 6 months. So, and pulling being the weaker of the two motions, we would make sure that her pushing pattern and her twist pattern were appropriate, because that's part of her gait cycle. And then you would manipulate it from there. I mean, you could take things in and out. The squat could change. It could go from simply a squat pattern that would be body weight and gravity to single leg squat. Eventually, we would like to do some single leg squatting with her because people can get stronger on one leg than they can on two.
Right.
And we're very unilateral. So it's running is a very unilateral position. You're going to drive off one leg at a time. So you could run the variable and you create that what is it, the periodization where you might have a couple, 3 months of prep and then maybe get more specific. And then the last month would be the final prep for her particular, event.
Nice. So we start at the ground up. We start at their feet. We check to find out where they currently stand, pardon the pun.
Mm-hmm.
We work up to the core and then some postural and shoulder and a little bit of arm strength because they do need to swing their arms and that momentum helps them drive forward.
Well, the arm strength is driven by their transverse motion, right? So the arm strength is important, but what's most important is that it ties into a cross-link position so that they rotate right to left, left to right. That could even be done by crawling them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's true.
Okay, because we need to cross-link them. And otherwise, we don't establish that core. And it depends on the movement, too. We run an assessment to find out, is she contralaterally challenged or ipsilaterally challenged? Because basically, is it the small oblique that's not assisting in the rotation, or is it the larger oblique? And it's a quick, easy test. We can run off a Swiss ball. We can do it against the wall and check to see which side is not functioning properly, because the big oblique contralaterally rotates as the small oblique actually pulls against that to stabilize the rotation. So we need to find out which side is the problem and which particular set of rotational muscles need more work to balance out that rotational or transverse motion. It sounds a lot more complicated than it is. It's relatively simple. It's just a matter of making sure that you pay attention to that detail. It's just making them stronger is not the answer. They have to be stronger correctly.
Which leads me into my next question. Most people like to people watch, and I'm no exception. And when I go to a gym, I watch people exercise, sure, but my most entertaining watching is watching. Watch. How many times can I say watch? The most entertaining people watching to me are the people running on treadmills. There are such a variance in gait. And some people look beautiful. They look like gazelles. They look like they're just sort of hovering above a cloud and just sort of moving along. Right. And then there's other people who they look like an elephant, and that's not a fat joke. That just means they're boom, 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 boom. They run really heavy, and every stride looks like they're trying to stomp on an anthill and squish it down. Do you work with gait on? Do you work on gait with people?
Yes, we do. Naeem helps with this one a lot because, in fact, he works. He's been a track guy. I don't know if you've spoken with him yet today, but he actually, he was a silver medalist at World Championships as a master track guy, and he's been in track and field since his Olympic days as a taekwondo athlete. So he's very akin to that sort of training, and so we rely on his judgment. We'll get a look, but yes, we do work on their gait, and it's gait is one of those subjects that you could have a PhD in.
Oh yeah,
it's so complicated, and there's so much going on. So we try to take a simplistic approach, and if you walk generally heel to toe. If you jog, you generally jog midfoot forward. When you're sprinting, you're generally on the balls of your feet moving forward. And the feet shouldn't be turned out too much. They shouldn't be turned in too much. It's a matter of the right amount of twist for the right amount of stride length. And so it's just a matter of looking at it, and people, even the novice who is not very much into the fitness business, can look at somebody run, and if they look kind of uncoordinated, they can't tell you what exactly doesn't look good, but they know it doesn't look good.
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of just get really basic and say, does that look smooth and easy, or is this really clumsy looking? And then it's just a matter of kind of tying it down. We might put them on a video. We'll use a little coach's eye, and we'll slow it down so we can see each particular stride, what happens to the foot when it loads, where is their body over the leg when they try to drive? Is their stride length too long? Are they behind their legs, or are they on top of their legs? We'll just look at that in a very simplistic way and try to fix that gait cycle. The biggest thing is that the treadmill, we don't train anybody on a treadmill to run a long distance race or any kind of race unless it's absolutely necessary. And the necessary would be weather, inclement weather. And we live in the Northwest, so there are times where you just can't get out and run, but there are times where it's just a slight sprinkle. You need to be outside. The problem is treadmill training is an open chain exercise. Running on hard ground, stable ground, is a closed chain exercise. Force production is 180 degrees different from running on the treadmill. The treadmill, you're hovering over a moving platform. Mm-hmm. On the ground, you're actually creating and generating force production and moving forward, propelling yourself across the planet. And there's gravity problems here. Mm-hmm. So it's really different. So we try to, unless those radical cases where we can't get them outside, we really try to encourage people that are going to train to run on real ground. It's a fallback position. It's okay if there's no other alternative, but it's definitely not the first choice is to put them on a treadmill.
No, I'm not a big fan of treadmills. They have their place, like many other things.
They do have their place,
but it's, for me personally, it's stupidly boring for both my mind and my body. And I would rather run in a rainstorm, a hurricane, than to run on a treadmill. In fact, I honestly cannot remember the last time I ran on a treadmill for myself, other than to demonstrate something to somebody.
Yeah. My wife will tell you a funny story. Is when we were, because she was my athlete long before we dated, and then ended up getting married. But when I first moved to the Northwest, about 23 years ago. She was one of my TKD athletes, and we needed to get her some road work. And it was back about 20 years or so. We used to have a little more snow during the year, and not a lot more, but a little more, and it would stick around a little while. And so she called me one day, and she says, "I got to go running." She says, "But it's snowing outside." I said, "Well, do you have a heavier coat? You know, do you have a ski mask?" "Yeah." "Well, then."
There you go.
Outside, because basically it's just run on a safe spot where it's not slippery and get outside. You're not going to die. Wear a better coat. And it's kind of, I'm kind of old school in that way. Is that there really is the best way, and whenever possible, the best way always trumps the fallback position. The fallback position is generally done because we are creating the wrong habits. We're allowing ourselves to choose less for whatever reason, and that is a Naeem problem. So I immediately associate that athlete with Naeem, and he sits down and we have a chat about goal setting again and exactly what it is we want to do. It's generally more about them than it is about the outside.
And I just want to make one more point. You mentioned it when you were talking about looking at somebody's gait, and I wanted to tell the listeners that even if you don't live in the Portland, Oregon area, you can work with people remotely, because there is this really brilliant technology called video, and you can shoot videos from your cell phone and send it to you, Bob, and you can look at these and make little notes on it and send it back, and so they can see what you're talking about. And in person is probably preferable, I would assume, but you're going to videotape and do the exact same thing, so maybe it doesn't really make much of a difference.
Well, that's a great point, because basically, a great majority of our athletes, over 60% of our elite athletes, are not local. They're Texas, Florida, Kansas. And wow. We do a lot of video analysis. We do a lot of that. We have a lot of do-it-yourself programs that are initiated based on an assessment. We even do assessments by video, or we'll use FaceTime. So we use as much technology as possible, because there are those people that are looking for possibly the information that we have, and we do not want to limit either our marketplace or their availability to us because they're just a little further away. There's just, with the advent of all this technology, it really is relatively simple to hook up.
Yeah, and since you're pretty much going to use it anyways with somebody standing in front of you,
exactly,
they don't have to stand in front of you. So that's great. Anyways, Bob, thank you so much for sharing all this fantastic information with us. I'm sure you're going to put a new slant on how people approach their training. If they have any questions, they can get a hold of you on my show notes page, livefitpodcast.com. Once again, Bob, thank you very much.
Thanks, Glenn. Appreciate the time.
And I will be talking to you later.
Okay.
Great stuff. Great stuff from Bob Maves. Did you get all that? You might need to listen to it again. There's a lot of really good stuff. I was glad I was able to listen to it several times. I will have a complete summary of this show and all shows at livefitpodcast.com. You could go directly to this page at livefitlean.com/ep48 for episode 48. Next time, I will have Olympian Naeem Hussain share with us how he helps people overcome the interference of the mind. Athletes of all kinds, even you, oftentimes are held back by their mind. Self-doubt, anxiety, lack of confidence, or just distractions. Naeem can help. Join us in 2 weeks to hear how. If you like the show, please give your support by subscribing or leaving an honest review. You can find the page on iTunes by going to livefitlean.com/iTunes or Stitcher Radio at livefitlean.com/Stitcher. You can also help me out by using my resources page at livefitlean.com/resources, where you will find many items and books that are very helpful for improving your health. I have read all of these books and used these items, and I definitely recommend them. I wouldn't have them on there if I did not. And the way you can help me is by not only using these items, you will help yourself, but when you purchase them, I will receive a small percentage of everything sold. So may not be much. It's not going to help me leave my day job, but it certainly helps out, and it does show your support. Once again, I thank you, I appreciate you, and I will be talking to you next time.